How do we feel like destroying some modern myths?
Love it.
I think that's what we've been doing a lot of today. That's a lot of what we try and do on the podcast. We try and smash the modern myths that infest people's mind, because Gad Sad is right that when he says that there is a mind virus going around. And the thing is, the mind virus takes a lot of forms outside of just the pure social justice, because a lot of it has been drip fed to us over the decades to such a point where young people growing up, like myself, take certain things as sacrosanct and just think that they are true without ever interrogating them, to the point where the second you do start to look into things, it does start to knock parts of your worldview down. And given that I think the society that we live in at the moment is pretty reprehensible and pushes morals that I find despicable, and also depicts an understanding of reality that is completely false and wrong, then I think it's good to smash all of these things so that you can reorientate your mind and understand the world better, because if nothing else, it will help you to defend yourself in the future. And I thought that's what I would do today. But before I do, we've got great videos on the website, as always. And Josh has been doing really well recently talking about cults. This is part 4 of his series on cults, which is a part of his larger contemplation series. This one, he's talking about the sorry state of cult psychology and propose better alternatives. And this one came about specifically because Josh, in the part of his research where he's looking into all of these, found that all of the major thinkers about cults were really poor at their jobs and mostly just wanted to demonize Christians, which was a very interesting takeaway, given that Josh and Bo involved in this. And I think Stelios as well. I don't want to mischaracterize.
Stelios is culturally orthodox, but he doesn't decide yet.
Yeah, I think most of the 3 of them are atheists. So the fact that they noticed this trend of always demonizing Christians and decided to come to the rescue was very interesting and very promising.
Good job, lads.
But also, I would like to suggest that Josh, if you're watching this, I know you're not, but if you do end up watching this, that you should do the cult of Ayn Rand, because I was looking into that a bit recently, and Ayn Rand had some decent ideas and understood economics to a certain point because she'd read a lot of Mises. But you should also do that because Ayn Rand had some wacky stuff.
Yeah, most of her beliefs was just to justify her cheating on her husband.
Yeah, and why she needed to smoke every single second of every single day, which I think is more acceptable. But yeah, this is really interesting, so please check this out. £5 a month. That's all you need. You can pay more if you want silver and gold membership, but just to get access to the videos, £5 a month. You know you want to. So let's carry on. So this is what spurred me on with this, which is somebody was posting about the fact demographic replacement, etc., the people who are actually coming over on the boats and coming in through migration, are they here to try and contribute to our country? Are they here to take economic extraction so they can send it back to the home country or just hoard it for themselves? And a lot of people, it was kind of a Brexit split right here. Most people said chances. And then, of course, you have someone with an EU flag in the title and what might be an AI-generated image. Yeah, so it's probably a bot account. Very interesting. Although then again, we've got a Mastodon out. Oh, never mind.
No.
Probably a bot account posting this hilarious image. Dear racist, your child needs a pint of blood. Choose the white one, because really, don't we all bleed the same?
Well,
aren't we all the same on the inside?
Fortunately, I have been reliably informed that those boats are full of doctors, lawyers, and engineers. So we can just ask one of them if this is the case.
Yeah, we can just say, well, but the problem is, this is a really bad example to go by, because one, statistically, if you look into who donates blood, both of them are probably the white one. And secondly, if you are looking for a blood transfusion, a bone marrow transplant, stem cells, or anything like that, it turns out the scientific research does not support we all bleed the same, man. We're all red and fleshy on the inside. Because it turns out that biology is a lot more complicated than just saying that we all have blood, muscles, nervous system, and a skeleton. And you can tell this because even in the UK, our precious, beloved, sacred NHS consistently puts out these kinds of advertisements where they say, we need ethnically diverse donors, blood donors, bone marrow donors. And we've got this, give blood for the black community, the increased demand for some rare subtypes, and that'll clue you in a little bit here, such as Rho, who are part of the blood, are more common in people of black heritage. We need more black people to become blood donors. And that's because of the fact that most black people in England do not donate blood on anywhere near the scale that is needed for all of the people who actually need blood transfusions.
This also isn't an actual woke issue. Like, this is
a scientific issue.
So if you have
you could argue that
like,
this is
like sickle cell, as they mention in here, then you do actually need black blood donors in order to help out people that are suffering from that. However, Harry, as you're going on the tirade about the complexities of biology, are you really expecting the same people that use the phrase female penis or don't know that ground disturbances are not children's bones to understand this very simple concept?
Well, if they actually care about the lives of and well-being of the people that they so often say that they do, and aren't just grievance mongers looking for a payout from government, then I would hope that they would try and listen to this.
I have my doubts.
So do I.
Okay,
sadly, because once again, these are the same people that, as you say, deny the idea that a male and female skeleton are structured differently for different biological purposes. I've literally, this is a personal note, but I've literally been in a discussion with somebody who considered themselves trans before in the past. I won't dox anybody, who was telling me about how male bone density being more than females is a myth. And that men, in fact, do not have more fast twitch muscle fibers than women, which is why women on average are just as strong as men are. And this was all used as to tell me why it is that his or her identity was completely legitimate, which, if you're watching Neil Mohan, I completely agree with.
Okay,
of course.
Great. Now open this pickle jar.
Yeah, there you go.
But it's trust
even
the science.
Men need that nowadays.
It's trust the science until the science doesn't agree with my ideology and my sloganeering, right? So that's why. Okay, no, that's not like proper science. We have to get rid of that. Things like bone density, things like muscle differences between males and females. Trust the science until it runs up against my identity.
It was just like color perceptions, spatial difference. Like Carl and I talked about this in Evil Origins of Feminism Part 2. There are so many, and I spoke to Helen Joyce about this. There's like 150 plus differences in male and female physiology. Mm-hmm. If you don't want to accommodate for those things, then you're just going to lead to more injuries and a less ergonomic world. But then they're not concerned about people actually flourishing. They're concerned, again, about ideology.
Yeah, an interesting example that I saw was in his book, Human Diversity, the very controversial Charles Murray.
Don't break out the bell curve.
No, I will not break out the bell curve. He's talking about various different factors of science and the differences between different groups of people. And in the section that he was talking about with men and women, he presented in one part an image of two faces. They were basically AI generated. A male and female version of the same face. So it was just the face. No, you couldn't see the scalp. There was no body attached to it. So it was just the faces. And he said, can you pick the male face and the female face? And obviously all it takes was a glance, because the human brain is so well developed to be able to tell these things that even tiny little clues based on different aspects of physiology can tell you within split seconds.
That's why the AI has really highly accurate gaydar. So
yeah,
it's just shown photos of gay and straight men, and it can identify the gay men with like 90% accuracy.
That is funny, though. That is really funny.
They had a field day at a Conservative Party conference. Anyway, sorry.
And this is where I get into articles like this, because most people who report on such things do very, very hesitantly admit to it. But there's an interesting admissions within these articles. Some of the people that you refer to, well, some of the people who were in charge of actually collecting blood and such, don't actually know that there is differences, and that's why you need to get people from different ethnicities donating blood, and were shocked at the idea that you had to, because even inferring that there are biological differences between people of different ethnicities was so much as to cause these people distress. And these are the people collecting this blood, and you would think that they would need to know that.
Medical professionals, presumably.
Well, I mean, it might be volunteers, but still.
No, but if you're going to be actually extracting
blood,
you have to have medical training. I would certainly hope so, at least.
So, am I going to be the one to point out the title?
Well, yeah.
It's a bit Icarus, isn't it? Flying very close to a mid-century sun.
It's the New York Times. They're allowed to do such. Just like Eric Adams the other day is allowed to come out and say migration is a problem when it starts to influence his affluent New York neighborhoods. Especially Democratic voting affluent neighborhoods, just like Martha's Vineyard, are allowed to be complete, absolute border protectionists as soon as migrants get shipped into their area. If you identify on the left, you are allowed to talk about these things in a bit more of a candid way than anyone like we are typically able to.
Eric Adams, Blood and Soil, 2024.
Right.
Yeah.
Which seems like hypocrisy, but they don't see it that way because they don't care. All they care about is power. They don't care about consistency or truth. They just care about power. So to them, they see no problem with saying things that seem incredibly hypocritical constantly, which is, unfortunately, it's difficult to not, as someone looking at this from a right-wing perspective, look at all the hypocrisy constantly. But they don't
Well,
care.
Oran McIntyre has a fantastic little, because he always comes up with these snappy phrases
right.
for it.
Tap the sign.
Yeah, he tapped the sign, and it's one of my favorites of his was, it's not hypocrisy, it's hierarchy.
Yep.
Because they're above us in the political totem pole, they're allowed to do it and persecute us for doing it if we do the same thing. But that's why I'm doing the same thing. Just try it. Just try it. So they give examples in this article talking about somebody called Zainab, who I assume is some kind of Middle Eastern or African ethnicity, talking about how her blood is rare, so is her situation. What concerns blood bankers on a daily basis is a more common condition caused by uncommon blood. Sickle cell disease is predominantly found, as you mentioned, in African Americans, and thalassemia among South Asians, and both conditions require precisely matched blood. But there is a shortfall between ethnic minority patients who need blood and ethnic minority donors. In New York, Caucasians are 35% of the population, but 58% of the donors. 28% of New Yorkers are African American, but only 8% of the donors in New York are African American. And that's after 5 years of hard work and outreach by the New York Blood Center with its Precise Match campaign.
That's also taxpayer dollars going on those particular campaigns.
Yes, it is. Even so, there was trouble with the when the Blood Center began in 2009 to offer the option to self-declare ethnicity on its donor forms. This was efficient. Without a budget to precisely screen every donation, they could home in on antigens known to be specific to certain populations. But at first, there were problems when staff members were initially upset by this apparent division of blood by ethnicity. We didn't educate the staff, says Dr. Westhoff, to know that we weren't segregating the blood just to be segregating.
The Jim Crow blood drive.
Yes, that's right. You need to go to the black fountain or the white fountain to get your blood extracted today, sir. We were doing it to send all the African American units to the sickle cell program children because they were doing much better with blood that came from the same ethnic group.
Saving children sounds pretty racist.
Yeah, I mean, that's the amazing thing, because once again, you just get this idea where even the people who should know better get upset by it.
How do you get this far into this and not understand that there's a reason for this that's beyond just random racism?
But they say exactly here in the New York Times article, they say, of course, disquiet was inevitable given sensitivity about whether race is skin deep and whether differences should be highlighted at all.
Universalist
if equality is ever to be reached. So we've propagandized all of the population to constantly think that equality is the only value that anyone should ever be striving for, and that any differences are only skin deep, and if there are any differences underneath the skin, means inherently that equality has been violated in some case, because apparently these people don't see that people who have differences between each other do still have the right to basic decency and human respect. I've seen people talk about it before, where you'll get into an argument with a lefty, you'll explain certain biological differences between groups, and they'll just go, well, why don't we just kill them all then? Well, because why is your brain going to that answer straight away?
Because that's where their brain goes in terms of the kinds of things. It's always projection, I think, to a certain degree. But that is really astonishing that you have people working ostensibly in the medical field who have been so propagandized over such a long period of time to think that there really are no differences between people whatsoever. There's no haplogroups, there's no genetic differences from the same exact crowd of people that will say trust the science and to say I love science, I IFL.
I effing love science.
Right, so much.
Saw your face.
Right, but unless it violates my propaganda, then.
This prerequisite commitment to equality is how you get to the liberals to the same position of Mao, which is that nature is a revolutionary enemy. That's you have to reorient everything.
We need to scare off the sparrows because
yeah.
they're against socialist farming.
Yeah, reality.
Why are we all starving
has
now?
To be reoriented around, and then this is also why the ONS and to an extent the FBI and the likes have stopped collecting demographic data because people kept citing certain crime statistics, and now you can't get demographic data on basically anything, even innocuous things like when it
Sajid Javid who signed off on not being able to declare if you're gay or not when you're taking blood? because of potential risks
When he
in
was
higher
Home
chances.
Secretary, I do think
Higher
that-
chances of HIV in particular subsets of communities.
Yes, and I don't know if it's such a joke, but I do know that is the case in the UK. And of
So
course,
you
that
could
was,
get AIDS blood if you're not careful.
yeah, you don't actually.
Thanks, conservatives.
You don't have to declare that in California either. It's
Right.
knowing
Yeah,
you
that might be
spread
what I'm
AIDS
thinking
is-
I think it was in California.
Yeah, I might have been mixing up.
No,
Just
but in the UK, that did actually pass.
I hate the conservatives so much.
But that's
I never
because
need a blood transfusion.
again, that's because most of the conservatives wanted to donate blood.
Yeah, and they carry on to say here, but the startling truth about blood is that acknowledging, seeking, and here's a really important word here, celebrating its differences can tip the balance between life and death for people who need it. So once again, you're only allowed to acknowledge any difference. It can't just be a value neutral thing. If there is any difference, we have to celebrate it. We
Right.
have to shout it from the rooftops. It's so amazing that we're all different. No, it's just natural.
But I
that
thought we
we're
were all the
different.
same.
Yeah.
And so why can't you celebrate having different blood types, having a greater propensity? Like it brings up here that, Asian people are more likely to have type A blood. So that's a difference. Why not celebrate that? I don't know.
Because the black people in San Francisco keep spilling it, maybe, and that's
Oh,
inconvenient.
oh,
Oh
right.
dear. Oh dear.
Yeesh.
Right, carrying on. Here's some of the things that they list here as to why certain communities aren't as willing to give blood. So blood
Hmm.
bankers are reluctant to talk about why some communities are keener to donate than others. But read some of the myths about blood donation that they regularly publish, and a picture emerges. Blood donation doesn't make you put on weight, nor does it affect your sex drive, though you shouldn't do vigorous exercise within 24 hours. That's fair.
I'm out.
It is not. It is not against Islamic law or tradition. One of the most common reasons people who don't donate give is just that no one asked them. They don't consider it unless somebody asks them to in the first place.
Where
Which
do
is
they conduct these, by the way, in terms of the blood drives? That's when, I worked at
I
like a,
don't think they list in the article
Oh,
itself.
I know what you're getting at.
so I worked at like a very, very highfalutin architecture engineering firm.
Oh yeah.
And every like 6 months, there would be a big blood drive. They'd come by with the van, and it's very, like the people who work here, they're architects and engineers. So they make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. And then it was all very part of company culture that we're all going to do the blood drive. What was the demographics of that company? White and Asian, predominantly. So where do they send those kind of trucks to? I think they send them probably to places like that where they know there's a company culture or there's some kind of incentive that people are going to go out and, oh, we're going to collectively do this all together.
Also, if they do it
Curious about
in
that.
Democrat voting cities,
Mhm.
then the ethnic population of a Democrat voting city are not likely to be the church-going conscientious black people that probably would donate blood.
Right.
Instead, it's probably
Mhm.
likely to be the welfare-dependent criminal element who may be taking drugs that would bar them from being able to give blood.
Right.
Disproportionately so.
Scholars, every one of them.
Yes.
But
COVID-bereaved children.
I think we've kind of illustrated a point here, and just to point out as well that this isn't just specific to blood. As I mentioned earlier, it's also stem cell and marrow transplants. And then we've got similar campaigns here about why the bone marrow registry needs more diverse donors and how to sign up. An interesting thing that I've seen as well is that if you get, it's especially difficult if you get people who are of mixed race who need a bone marrow transplant because neither one of their parents is genetically similar in the marrow enough to be able to be a proper transplant for them. So you need to get people of similar mixed race ancestry so that they will match up. It's very interesting how all of this lines up. And honestly, on a kind of nerdy level, fascinating.
Right. So you need a sibling or someone else who has,
Yeah.
There's a quote from the
Genetic.
Washington Post article that I see you've got in the script, and it
Oh, yeah.
says, "Tell me where your ancestors lived 500 years ago, and I'll tell you who your potential donors are." And that's Jeffrey Chell, who works at the National Marrow Donor Program. So, a really far-right outlet there that
Extremist,
just says,
yeah.
we can trace back through multiple centuries as to who you can and can't get bone marrow from. Yeah, we don't all have the same innards, unfortunately.
Yes, but I hope all of this has been enough to let you know that as much as we shouldn't be bigoted and mindlessly discriminated to people of different backgrounds to us, it is enough to say that no, we're not all just the same on the inside. We don't all bleed the same, and we should be accepting of that. Not celebrating it. We don't have to celebrate it, just get naked on the rooftops and go, oh, I'm so happy about this. Just acknowledge it and let it allow you to navigate the world in a better way than liberal hegemony would like you to otherwise.
If you appreciated that segment from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to get access to all the premium content that's on the site, such as the Epoch series, this episode on Pit the Younger Part 2. you'd like to find out what else is being put out, you can follow on Getter at lotuseaters_com on Getter. Thank you and goodbye.